Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, the man in black fled across the desert, and the audiences ran in the other direction as fast as they could. This is The Dark Tower. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like The Dark Tower, which we'll be talking about today.
The darkest.
The Tower, my feelings, it's all just very dark. My mood.
This timeline.
Yes. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
You know, we're recording this. It's New Year's Eve. It's almost 2021. I can't believe it's... Wait a minute.
No.
2021 is almost over. Oh, well.
Yeah.
That was a year, I guess. That happened. And we're going to keep moving on. See what happens next time.
We thought 2020 had us by the balls till we met 2021. And it was just everything and then a little extra.
Yeah.
Everything that 2020 brought and then some more crap.
Keeps on giving.
Yeah, well, right before we started recording, the news broke that Betty White passed away. So
yeah,
that's just another cherry on top of this wonderful year.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace to Betty White. I mean, she lived obviously a very long and fruitful life, so it's not like she was 99 years old.
It's not a tragedy.
Strong gust of wind.
But it's a loss.
Right. That's just what 2021 getting its last shots in before 2022 rolls in. Aside from that, everything's great, I guess. I'm getting over being sick. You could probably hear my voice, and I'll be taking frequent coughing breaks.
Okay.
But the podcast waits for no man. The show must go on.
It must.
But, you know, being sick is a good way to describe how I feel about the movie we're talking about today.
Wow, okay.
So it puts me in the right state of mind. But getting ahead of myself, you know the rules. Show and tell. Ian, what did you watch this week that you wanted to talk about that you thought was cool?
I watched something happy and fun and light and funny. It's a series called Starstruck on HBO, not to be confused with Moonstruck or anything else that sounds like it that you think you might know what it is. It's not that. It's a brand new show.
I thought Star Search at first when you first said it. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I was like, the talent show from the 80s?
Yeah, it's surprising. There's a lot of funny comedians back then. No, this is brand new. It came out earlier this year on the BBC, and then HBO Max dropped it. Comedy series, light, high-spirited romantic comedy starring a lady named Rose Matafeo, who also co-wrote it. She's really funny. She plays a New Zealand lady who is living in East London and surrounded by funny, wacky roommates. And an unexpected romance breaks out that is full of tension and irony and develops over the course of this short 6-episode series, as they call seasons in the UK. It's kind of like Broad City meets Fleabag, and it's really good. It's just fun and it's different, and it's an original story, and I really liked it.
Nice. I like that. I'll give it a look. Could use some lighter content in my life. It's all been pretty bleak lately, just movie watching and series watching wise. I'm getting caught up in a lot of crime dramas, both TV and of the movie variety.
I hear that. A lot of apocalypse is happening.
Yeah. The shows I'm watching, we talked about Station 11, but also I watched Yellow Jackets, which is pretty dark.
Yeah.
The new season of Dexter, and I wrapped up Succession, and I'm watching Hightown. So that's all pretty bleak. But I watched a movie that, even though it's a crime movie, it skewed a little bit more, I don't want to say jovial, but it definitely had a sense of humor about it. It was shooting for like kind of a more lighthearted tone. It was called War on Everyone. It's not a movie that I was familiar with before. I think I was researching something for the podcast and reading up on Alexander Skarsgård's filmography, and it came up. A black comedy buddy cop film is how it's described on Wikipedia, with Michael Pena. And I thought that sounds good because I like both those actors a lot.
Sure.
John Michael McDonough directed it. I am not super familiar with him, but I have seen his brother is Martin McDonough, who is probably the more famous of the two. He made 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Okay.
7 Psychopaths, In Bruges. So it's been that style of a really dark comedy with over-the-top violence. So the movie itself doesn't 100% stick the landing, to be honest. It's kind of all over the place. It's got a weird tone, but a really good cast. It's worth checking out if you're a fan of that. It's breezy. It's 97 minutes. I can't give it a full-throated recommendation, but if you're a fan of any of the actors involved or any of those Martin McDonough films, then I would say go check it out. But it's Alexander Skarsgård, we know, recently played Randall Flagg in the new version of The Stand that was airing.
We enjoyed that.
It was on Peacock, wasn't it?
I think that was why I signed up for Peacock. Yeah, I think you're right.
They were wrong. It was Paramount Plus.
Yeah. But it was, I don't know if we enjoyed it so much as I enjoyed him in it. I thought he was well cast.
Yeah.
The series itself had issues. But Randall Flagg, spoiler alert, is a character in The Dark Tower as well, though he goes by a different name in this version.
So sneaky, that guy.
Yeah, he gets around. So I thought it was nice to juxtapose Skarsgård, who played the role, and Mcconaghuey. So I went back and dug into some more Skarsgård performances. And you know what? I'll take Skarsgård in that role any day over Mcconaghuey.
Oh, really?
I thought
Okay.
McConaughey was dream casting for the Man in Black when they announced it. And I think he could have been, but we'll get into my issues with that role and the casting when we talk about the movie more. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
We're going to have an interesting clash of opinions perhaps on this one. I did not bring the baggage that you brought to this week's movie. And so I had a real different experience, I think. But we have a history of coming together, of convincing each other of our various points of view that we bring. And so we'll see who wins out in this episode.
Yeah, you're not going to win me over. I'm sorry to say. So what Ian is referring to is The Dark Tower, for those listeners that aren't aware, is based on a epic, you could call it fantasy, but it's got some sci-fi elements. It's got some Western elements. It's got some steampunk elements. It's a big series of books from Stephen King. He wrote them over the course of 30 years for the main saga, and then he threw in a couple side stories after the fact. So I've read all these books, some of them more than once, some of them only once. Some of them work standalone, some of them don't really. But they are very near and dear to my heart. I have a big encyclopedia of the Dark Tower, compendium, if you will. It just goes over all like the interconnecting storylines and references to other King works and all that. So
This is the setup for a major tragic letdown.
And I don't think you'd be surprised to know I avoided this movie when it came out.
Oh.
I had no interest in it. I was very excited initially, the first news that I was hearing about it, some of the casting news and some of the other things that I was hearing about, filmmakers that were involved initially and maybe dropped out. I had high hopes. And when I heard the movie was going to be reduced into just one theatrical movie that would tell a very abbreviated version of all 7 books in one 90-minute movie, it did not instill a lot of confidence in the execution. And then when the reviews started coming out, not only from critics, but almost more importantly to someone like me, from other people on the Dark Tower subreddit, it was not good.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what? Why do it to myself? And then a couple of years later, I started a little podcast, and now I have to do it to myself. So I'm going to do it to myself.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you had spared yourself the pain, knowing in advance that it was going to be painful. And it turned out to be true.
I couldn't find one person to say anything good about this movie. And that includes people that had no attachment whatsoever to the books. People that just watched the movie were like, I didn't get it, or it seemed weird. There was references that didn't quite work for me. That kind of comes upon my grand feeling about this movie, which we will get into later. But yeah, I don't think it really worked for fans of the books or otherwise. But you are certainly welcome to argue the other side of that.
Yeah, I came into this, unlike you, I'd read a little something. I used to read a lot of Stephen King. So there was a time when I was really into him. And I think that caused me to dabble in one of the books. Because I have this, kind of like Jake Chambers, I have this vague, fuzzy visions of the gunslinger in my head that I can call up. And sometimes I sketch drawings of them, but I don't know what they mean. And I must have not had a great experience with whoever I tried to jump into the series. And so I didn't get into it. And then that was like a long time ago. So when I came to this movie, it was fresh. I'm like, okay, I know the outlines of it. It's a Stephen King adaptation. It's something big and epic. And maybe it's not going to be that on the screen, but I went in pretty cold. And then I discovered while watching it, there was one scene that I knew, the cooking the chicken scene somehow. And I think maybe because McConaughey was going on late night TV with that as his clip and then showing that piece.
That was the sizzle reel footage for this movie. I remember, maybe not even from watching late night, but just internet clips of people putting out new footage from the Dark Tower. I do remember that scene. I don't know if it featured prominently in trailers. I couldn't find it in any of the trailers I watched for this, but I knew I'd seen that scene too. So there must have been some marketing going on with that specific scene, which is a good scene. That's one of his better scenes.
Yeah, it's maybe the most interesting thing in the movie.
I feel like you're making my point for me when you say stuff like that. Do you want me to tell the story about this movie? And it's a long one. This is going to be maybe our longest monologue besides Ishtar. I don't think we're quite getting to that point, but
oh boy,
it's a hefty one. You ready?
Yeah, polish up your shine and let's hear it.
It took Stephen King 30 years to wrap up the main saga of his magnum opus fantasy / sci-fi / western / totally bananas book series, The Dark Tower. It took almost as long to adapt it for the screen. The first news about a screen adaptation of the ambitious series came around February 2007, when J.J. Abrams was said to be attached to produce and direct a planned 7-film series. His Lost collaborators Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse were involved as well, writing and producing the project. Progress was slow and all involved maintained nervous detachment, with Abrams stating in September 2008 that the project required time he did not have because of Lost, reiterating this in May 2009 by saying work on the series wouldn't begin until Lost had wrapped up.
Unfortunately, there's no making up for lost time.
In October 2009, Lindelof revealed the trio would allow the 3-year option on the rights to expire, as he said, and I quote, "You'll be hard-pressed to find a huger fan of The Dark Tower than me. That's probably the reason that I shouldn't be the one to adapt it. After working 6 years on Lost, the last thing I want to do is spend the next 7 years adapting one of my favorite books of all time. I'm such a massive Stephen King fan that I'm terrified of screwing it up. I'd do anything to see those movies written by someone else. My guess is that they will get made because they're so incredible, but not by me."
We get it, Shaggy, it wasn't you.
In April 2010, Universal Pictures revealed plans to produce 3 movies with TV seasons in between the movies to bridge the story gaps between the films. Akiva Goldsman was hired to write the script and Ron Howard signed on to direct. A release date of May 17, 2013 was set for the first movie, despite Universal not even having officially greenlit the movie. Casting rumors began to fly, with Javier Bardem and Viggo Mortensen rumored to play the gunslinger Roland Deschain, but Howard was still cautious, saying to Howard Stern in January 2011, "I don't know if it's going to happen or not."
He did know, and it wasn't.
In April 2011, Bardem was reportedly cast as Roland, but by May, concerns about the budget were surfacing, and Universal was reportedly looking to co-finance the project with another studio. This didn't ultimately happen, but Universal did move forward with the project at a lower overall budget, and Goldsman began reworking his script to adhere to the new budget.
Take out the rich characterization. We can't afford that.
Universal had until 2011 to officially greenlight the picture before losing the rights, but that time came and went, and on July 18th, 2011, Universal canceled development of the project due to financial concerns. Howard remained hopeful he could get it made with another studio or a streamer. Warner Brothers expressed interest and had until August 2012 to decide whether to move forward, but they also ultimately declined to proceed. On April 10th, 2015, it was announced that Sony Pictures Entertainment was making the movie and had it on a fast track with a brand new script from Goldsman and Jeff Pinkner. Howard was out as the director, and Danish filmmaker Nikolai Arcel was hired as director. He reworked the script with insanely prolific Danish screenwriter and filmmaker Anders Thomas Jensen, and production moved forward on the now $66 million movie, with Idris Elba cast in the role of Roland, and Matthew McConaughey playing the Man in Black, also known as Walter Paddock, also known as Randall Flagg, also known as Walter O'Dim, also known as Martin Broadcloak, also known as Richard Ferris, also known as Raymond Fiegler, also known as John Farson, also known as Richard Fremantle, also known as Old Creeping Judas, also known as Richard Fry, also known as Russell Faraday, also known as Richard Fannin, also known as Rudin Falero,
5 minutes later,
known as the Covenant Man, also known as the Walking Dude. Filmed between April and August of 2016 in South Africa and New York City, with studio work done in LA, the film was scheduled to be released January 13th, 2017. Poor test screenings gave the studio cold feet, however, and they considered taking Arcel off the project for post-production. Arcel eventually remained on, but Howard and Goldsman would advise him closely. The release date was a real moving target, first being set for February 17th, 2017, then July 28th of the same year, and finally to August 4th. Critics hated the movie, as it currently sits at 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences concurred, as the film alienated fans of the book series with its, let's say, reimagining of the story, and failed to entice new viewers to enter this dense world. It would open to a disappointing $19.5 million, barely edging out Dunkirk in its third week for the top spot. Eventually grossing $113.2 million worldwide, the film was a critical disaster and financial disappointment, and all plans for the extended Dark Tower universe are on hold as of this writing.
Wow, okay. A lot in there. This story is spread across 7 books, I guess. The making of this movie is an epic story in itself, and it's a story about what didn't come to pass, right? Like that sounded so promising. To have people like Damon Lindelof working on this script would have been incredible.
Like what he did with The Watchmen. Imagine what we could have got with him at the helm of a Dark Tower series. It breaks my heart that it didn't come to pass. Even Ron Howard, he's not the most elite filmmaker of all time, but he's got cachet in Hollywood, and he could probably get some resources together to make a decent Dark Tower project. I didn't mind the idea of having movies and TV shows, a combination. It's what the MCU is doing now. now.
Yeah, that was pretty forward thinking. It sounds, in retrospect, a little bit over ambitious. Like, who was going to pull that off? I could only see the best people in Hollywood making that work with a story that wasn't so loaded with heavily recognizable IP. It's certainly recognizable for King fans, which is a lot of people,
Right.
but it's not on the level of Avengers.
No, it's not. Even I think among King fans, like The Dark Tower, it's not The Stand. It's not his most famous work. It's a little bit hardcore, even by King fan standards. I think you have King fans that have given it a try and ultimately decided it wasn't for them, like you. Hopefully you give it another chance one day. And I think you have people that casually read it but never really gave it another thought. And then you have people that just avoid it. I avoided it for a decent amount of time, and I was a big King fan. It just seemed daunting.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not even Game of Thrones level IP.
Yeah, it's a movie that it turned into a business. Like, it starts out as a
Yes.
vision and then it turns into a product. And it's like, okay, we have to finish the product no matter what. And you can't put that many epic books into one single movie. So you have to pick a lane. And it's just weird. They picked the young adult lane. They picked a kids movie. And that wasn't the special thing, apparently. Not knowing that going into this, I did not know that it wasn't a kid's story. A lot of Stephen King stuff is sort of kid-centric, and I guess the kid is not a nobody in this story, but he's maybe not what the fans expected would be the center of the story. Is that fair to say?
I would say Jake in the books is a protagonist, but he's one of four.
Okay.
There's four main characters, really. So he's 25% of the main story. And there's nothing wrong with putting him front and center in the movie, but the tone of it felt like they were making this movie for the Hunger Games crowd, like a YA thing, like you said. And that's just not where they should have gone. It should have been a hard R movie, probably would have been better and a little truer to the vibes of the book. But even not going for like it had to be more violent or had to be more profane, it's just a weird tone and vibe. Like, it's almost got a sci-fi thing to a lot of it, which does come up in the books, but not nearly this heavy. And it doesn't just drop you into the sci-fi world. Like, Flagg's Fortress is, Walter Paddock's Fortress, Mcconaghuey, we'll just call him Mcconaghuey, is like, it feels like something out of fucking Stargate, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's very spacey. There's teams of technical people operating his computers and equipment.
Yeah, it misses the whole tone, which you could forgive the concessions you have to make to bring a story like this to the big screen if you get the heart and soul of it right. And that's what's missing.
And it relegates the most fun thing, which is the gunslinger, to being a side character rather than being the guy that we care about.
Do you want to go through the story a little bit? Tell people what we've been talking about while they might be in the dark? Because I don't know how many people actually saw this movie.
Yeah, let's see if this makes any sense. So, a New York kid named Jake, played by Tom Taylor, has been having dreams of another world, and he's been obsessively drawing what he sees in his dreams, which includes a dark tower, a heroic gunslinger, and an evil man in black. Jake's mom and her boyfriend think the kid is going crazy, so they try to ship him off to a children's psychiatric facility. But Jake recognizes the employees who come to pick him up as the evil minions from his dreams, so he ditches them and runs away. He locates an abandoned building, also pictured in his drawings, where he is forced to flee from a floorboard monster and through a high-tech portal into the mysterious land of Midworld.
Floorboard monster. That is true to the book. That does happen.
Okay, that feels like a Stephen King thing. It's like shades of It and
he loves a creepy house. Yeah, that is attacking you at the same time you're navigating it. So very true to King.
But yeah, it points out the tough juxtaposition of there's a high-tech portal. It's got a computer talking to him in computer voice, and he's pushing buttons. And there's a creepy monster made of splintery wood attacking you in a haunted house at the same time in the same scene. It's hard to reconcile that.
I don't know why the portals are so high tech. In the book, they literally just look like doors, like freestanding doors, which might be a goofy look for a movie, but that's why you do the background work of creating the world so it doesn't feel out of place when you do show something like that in it.
Yeah, see, that makes sense. I heard somewhere reading about the story that there are places where the borders between the worlds have worn thin, and that's how people move between the worlds instead of a high-tech portal that goes aligning universes, universe aligned, please proceed.
Exactly. It's making a whole, I don't know, you're taking all these characters and you're almost putting them in a whole different universe from the books. This weird, I keep coming back to Stargate, but I think of nothing more than that. Even like Event Horizon, it's got a lot of that same technologically hard sci-fi feel to it that just doesn't mesh with the rest of what's going on. And again, that can work, but you got to set the tone. And in the books, and this is not going to be like a in the books podcast where I constantly go, well, in the books, it's like this, because I know that's not fun to listen to. But it sets up more of an old West world. And then when the technological stuff starts creeping into it, it introduces it with a reason for why it's like this. And it's worlds kind of folding in on each other over time.
Okay.
And like old decaying civilizations and stuff went back to being low tech because of conflicts that went on hundreds and thousands of years ago. But here it's just, no, there's none of that. It's just right into the mix. Everyone's got portals.
Well, when you say that, it does get hinted at later on. So when you describe it now, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. What they were showing in Midworld and the way they live and how they live in this semi-medieval looking town full of huts. And yet there's the ruins of technology around them. And they have little pieces, like they're running a high-tech portal with not a windmill, but a water wheel.
Yeah, you have the context now and it makes sense in retrospect, but it doesn't make sense really while you're watching it. You're just left to fill in the blanks for yourself.
So let's talk about the tone they set, because here's where the movie almost worked for me, or worked to a certain extent. It starts out, it's a story about Jake, and it's a really conventional young adult's chosen one story, which I know you will be very mad and say it's not supposed to be that, but for me, that part worked. It's a kid. He's struggling. He lost his dad. He's having weird dreams. He doesn't know what's real. The adults around him don't believe him. And I actually liked Tom Taylor, and I thought he played this stuff pretty well. It's smarter than it would need to be. It's not the most dumbed down version of kids' sci-fi adventure. Would you agree with that much?
Yeah, I actually really like Tom Taylor in this. Of all my problems with this movie, the cast is not one of them, and the performances really aren't either, except one in particular, which is Mcconaghuey. But no, Tom Taylor is good in this role. And yeah, kid protagonists, when you're an adult, can veer into annoying if they're not careful and if they're written by somebody who has no experience with what kids are really like. But he did feel like a fleshed out character with his own internal life and motivation, which helps go a long way to want to go on this trip with him. I did think there was some inconsistent characterizations with him, mostly in his fighting style. All right. So he gets getting bullied at school because of his drawings. And he rocks this bully with just a devastating right hook, just a beautiful overhand. And then once the kid's on the floor, he just starts like raining down these weak little hammer fists on his arm.
Man.
It's like, no, man, you've got this overhand right in your back pocket. What are you doing? You clearly know how to box.
Yeah. Well, he's a one-shot knockout artist, and his ground and pound needs work, is what you're saying.
He's got to go to Extreme Couture or something, work on his ground and pounds. But
that's right.
That's obviously a joke. That didn't throw off his characterization for me at all. I just thought it was a funny moment. Like,
it was a weird scene where it was a short moment to show how defensive he is about his drawings. Like, you don't fuck with his drawings. That's the lesson you learn. But it also set up a reason for his folks to say, you got to get out of here because you're causing too much trouble at school. But and
they sent him to the sketchiest camp for troubled kids I've ever fucking heard of. What is it? The day he gets home from school, and then the mom's like, "Oh, school told us about this camp where they'll help you deal with your anger and your problems." And then what is it? The next day, they're there like, "All right, let's go, get the fuck out of here." And they're like very aggressively pushing him into a van, essentially.
They're ready to pack him off. Yeah, the mom is sympathetic, and I liked her, except that for the purposes of the plot, she buckles a little bit too easily to these very sketchy people taking her kid and then fucking jumping out windows and chasing him across rooftops. It's like, hey, maybe for his safety, don't chase him and force him to jump between roofs in New York City.
Yeah. I mean, she looked like a little nervous at that point, but she wasn't, she didn't say, hey, stop. She just kind of let them go after him.
This experiment is over. Go home. I'm going to go find my kid. Like, that would have been a normal mom response, but that didn't work for the plot, so they had to chase the kid around the city.
I do like Katheryn Winnick a lot. She's a favorite actress of mine. She was really good in the show Vikings. I don't know if you ever checked that out. She's great in that. And she was good in this. The characters, it's a standard mom character.
It's standard, but it
cares, but just not enough to really have a breakthrough with her son where she believes him and takes his side over the shitty stepdad.
Stepdad's pretty shitty. He doesn't have a lot of nuance.
No, he's pretty transparently just trying to get Jake out of there, which I did think it was nice when Walter calls him out on it.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say.
During the one scene.
Yeah, he calls him out. Fucking hardcore. He just lets him have it. And you're like, yep, that was Ron. What was his name? Was his name Ron?
It was Lon.
Lon. Oh, I'm sorry. They did it
short for Lonnie, I assume. Yeah. This is a big change from the book because Jake has a nuclear family in the book, but his parents are terrible and pay no attention to him. His dad's very wealthy, but does a ton of cocaine. So he basically just leaves on his own, and you're left to wonder if his parents even notice.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
that would have been more interesting and different. Yeah.
I understand why that's a longer setup to get to that conclusion.
Right.
It requires maybe a little more lifting than the typical like struggling single mom has a shitty boyfriend and there's conflict. You can recognize those dynamics immediately in a story without having to do a lot of setup.
You can shorthand, just sketch it all in, and everyone goes, oh yeah, there's the mom, there's the shitty stepdad, there's the creepy therapist who doesn't believe him.
Discount Tony Shalhoub. Guy looks just like Tony Shalhoub, right?
Yeah, I was waiting for him to do something more. Yeah, he has that Tony Shalhoub look. He also looks like I've seen him in other movies.
Yeah, he's a guy. He's one of those guys.
He's one of the guys. He looks intimidating. He acts slightly creepy, but he doesn't pay off. The only payoff of the therapist scene is it's just more harping on, no, adults don't believe the kid, get it together, kid. And the only other trick is that he apparently used to be the caretaker at the Overlook Hotel because he's got a little picture on his little treasured side table. Did you notice that Easter egg?
I did not while I was watching it, but I found it doing research for the podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a few little Easter eggs sprinkled in, not a ton of them. I think there was they had plans for a lot more, but there's rights issues. So they had to stick with what Sony could get the rights to or had the rights to already.
Yeah, they seem to be more the sort of unspoken little reference. There's a girl playing with a red car that looks like Christine in one scene.
Yeah.
But just a glimpse of that. So they're not actually doing anything with them. They're just like, if you know Stephen King, this red car means Christine. And the St. Bernard means Cujo that you see walk past on the street.
Even calling the Man in Black Walter Paddock, I wonder if they couldn't get the rights to use Randall Flagg, even though he goes by many different names in the Dark Tower book series.
Okay.
So Walter Paddock is one of his names in the series, but I wonder with this, At the Stand reboot was already in, not production, but the planning stages at this point. I wonder if somebody else had the rights to the character. I don't know. King IP's got to be a fucking nightmare to manage.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, another weird twist about Walter's names, if you read the blurb on FX, I think, is what has this movie currently on streaming, a slightly edited for TV version. And in the blurb, it's like, the gunslinger fights against Walter O'Dim. Like, they didn't mention that name in the movie. Why is that in the official blurb on the streamer site?
That is one of his names.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that was just somebody wrote the press materials without seeing the movie. And
Maybe.
Just referred back to the text.
Paging through the book looking for a name. What the fuck is this guy's last name? Oh, there we go.
Right. So then we get our first glance of Roland in this scene with his dad, played by Dennis Haysbert, which is good casting, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd
right?
say you're in good hands with him.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
You son of a bitch.
Sorry.
Elba, I don't know that Haysbert is that much older than Idris Elba to be his dad, but maybe if marriage and kids happened younger in Midworld.
Midworld, who knows? Yeah, who knows what goes on there?
I think Idris Elba's almost 50. He might be 50 already. I thought Dennis Haysbert was late 50s, but he might be 60s by this point.
Well, they give him a little dusting of grace. He has a kind of a fatherly look.
They do.
And he brings a nice gravitas. Both these actors are just great to see on screen, but it's not a great scene, right?
No, it's just, it feels cheap. This is
Yeah.
the best way to describe it. Not cheap in the sense that it's taking shortcuts narratively, even though maybe it is, but cheap in the sense that it looks like it was made for not a lot of money.
Yeah,
Just
you're meeting the hero, or at least the guy who is the mythical hero in this duo of protagonists, right? This is the special guy. And unlike other parts of the movie where they did build some big sets and show some vistas of Midworld, they do this in a little cramped piece of forest that looks like a soundstage, maybe. You basically can't see in any direction, and there's just some cheap set dressing of barbed wire, and there's mist being pumped in, so you can definitely not see past 15 feet from the guys. And this is the epic introduction to our epic hero,
and villain.
Yeah, the whole thing happens in this little confined thing that feels like a TV show scene, doesn't it?
It reeks of reshoots to me, and I don't know for sure if this was a scene that went back in for reshoots or something they added after the fact to maybe flesh out Roland's story more and his feud with Walter. But yeah, it feels like they were trying to match the forests of Midworld that they actually filmed in with a soundstage after the fact and make it look something like it, but it doesn't really land.
Yeah, without spending another $1 million. Because yeah, imagine how Peter Jackson would stage this same thing. This is supposed to be, at least from what I understood, what they're telling you is this is the end of a gigantic war that they just fought between the forces of good and evil. And the gunslinger and his dad are back to back in their final stand against the big bad guy. And you could imagine the camera ripping across fields of carnage and an iconic location for the showdown on some grand vista hill or something. And instead they're in a little gully with some barbed wire and nothing. Sad.
Yeah. And I know Walter's the Man in Black, but he's still just wearing that same suit on the battlefield. That's his one suit. That's all he's got. They can wear no armor at all, not even boots. I think he's wearing loafers.
Yeah, I can see why there's the urban version of Walter, but why wasn't there a mythical dressed up version for when he was fighting the Battle of Legend?
My theory is that Matthew McConaughey just showed up in that suit and he was like, I'm not changing for this movie. So this is what you guys are getting. And they were like, all right.
Clock's ticking. Get on set.
Yeah, he was pissed about the reshoots. It's too bad. I'm wearing my Walter outfit from the future times, even now. But
yeah, but it's sad because this is where it should be that kind of scene where you get a sense of, oh my God, there's a whole story here that we didn't see. And Roland has this incredible history where he fought side by side in epic battles with his father. And then here's the moment where he loses him, but he also loses him real quick. It's scary how easily Walter makes people die, including like big characters like the hero's dad. He just goes, stop breathing. But
it's too powerful. It's like he could just get a fucking megaphone and say it to the army that he's attacking, or just walk around the battlefield. Hey, everyone, just stop breathing. We'll kill each other instead of me. One guy that's resistant to your powers is not going to be enough to turn the tides of the battle.
Yeah. And knowing all this and piecing this together, it's hard to picture what that battle was. Like you said, who was fighting who and why did it go this way? And why did the two of them end up alone in a little gully?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense contextually.
Yeah.
I'm turning you. I could feel it.
Yeah, this is where I think if you were to try to fix this movie, it would go a long way to just make this scene epic and give people a feeling for what Roland was about and what the world was about and what are the stakes of this big battle. And because that's missing at the top when you meet him, everything else seems small. And the rest of it's just like a burned out version of Roland that's walking around this desolate landscape and everyone's bummed and just barely getting by.
Yeah, he's just being a grumpy dick the rest of the time.
Yeah, but it wasn't earned.
With a few exceptions. Yeah. No, it wasn't earned. And the Roland of the literary story, I didn't use the word book there. I'm tired of using the word. He's very focused on saving the tower. And that's why he's a little brusque and doesn't really care about everyone's personal problems. He's like, we have to save the world. Doesn't really matter what your issues are because it won't matter when the tower falls. But here he's like, no, I don't care about that shit. I just want to kill this one fucking guy, Matthew McConaughey. And I don't know, it just robs him of some of the hero's resolve that would make his demeanor a little more palatable and a little more understandable.
Yeah, they flipped him into the opposite thing. That's crazy. I didn't know that was another divergence from the original story. Because, he's a Han Solo in this. He's a jaded, burned out guy who can't be bothered with anyone but his own needs.
Right.
And it works for the kids' movie because the kid has to then remind him of the idealism of youth and values that he used to hold as a younger man. But boy, another big change. And I understand more why it left your head spinning.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to the middle part of the story?
Yeah. Let's find out what happened next.
All right. So after wandering through the desolation of Midworld, Jake meets the gunslinger he saw in his visions, Roland Deschain, played by Idris Elba. Roland explains that the man in black is Walter Paddock, played by Matthew McConaughey, and that Walter is abducting kids like Jake with psychic powers known as the Shine. He's using the kids' powers against their will to try to destroy the Dark Tower, a literal tower at the center of the universe which defends all worlds, including Earth, from the forces of darkness. Back in New York City, Walter tracks down Jake's mom and learns of Jake's uniquely powerful shine. Meanwhile, Roland takes Jake to a village where a seer interprets his visions and locates Walter's headquarters. Walter's minions attack the village, but Roland fights them off and saves Jake, and the two take a portal back to New York City with a plan to jump to Walter's world from there, jumping back and forth and to and fro.
Yeah,
in this plan.
Listening to you read that section, I'm like, this is just a travel movie. Like, this guy goes over there, and then that guy goes back over there, but then they come back.
Right.
That's most of the story, is just jumping back and forth.
I will say, though, it was refreshing to see Jackie Earle Haley in this movie back in his wheelhouse.
Yes.
Playing a fucking creepy-ass weirdo.
Dukes. He's back.
Dukes.
He's back.
Playing a decidedly un-Dukes-like character.
The long hair is gone. The shirt is back on.
Long hair is gone.
With the leather jacket over top.
I think his name's Richard Sayre.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, Sayre.
Okay.
I think his name is Richard Sayre in the book, but I don't know if they say that. So he's back in his wheelhouse, and always delightful to see Jackie Earle Haley in a movie playing somebody who's terrifying.
Yeah, he tries to bring some menace to it, as he's good at doing.
Yeah, but we also get another Blast Zone veteran popping up for a repeat appearance. We got Fran Kranz.
Yeah.
From Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods. He was the hero of that movie. He's just a little sidekicky bad guy in this.
Pimley. What a stupid ass name.
It fits what they made the character. The character's kind of
Pimley.
It kind of sucks because I really didn't know Fran Kranz until Cabin in the Woods, and I'm like, oh, this guy's really good. He brings something really fun. He obviously gets to end up starring in that movie by the end, and he's just a little henchman in this. But they wrote this role where by that name and by his look, you're like, oh, he's going to be the guy who fucks up and gets shat on by the angry boss. But he's not quite that.
Yeah,
he's kind of just competent.
No, he's just a competent henchman.
Yeah, he's just middle of the road guy, just holding it down, working the machines. Why do you need him? Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really need him there. He's just a dude.
Could have been an extra almost, yeah.
And then there's Abby Lee. She plays the henchman that screws up, even though she doesn't really screw up. But Walter just seems to pick on her. I think because he likes her. He's playing like a little playground bully thing going on. Like, he's kind of got a crush on her, so he's mean to her.
That's a gross twist that you added, but I totally buy it. I think you're right.
Now that you're linking back to their scenes, because he makes a comment about how like the face she picked, because they don't really look like people. They look like gross little
rat creatures. Yeah.
Kind of little rat creatures. And he's, you picked like a real nice face, and he caresses her. But then the next time we see her, he's like burning her face. And she didn't even really screw anything up personally. He's just mad that something went wrong.
Yeah, like the first, she delivers the bad news the first time, which gets her on his radar in the first place. But the second time, someone else delivers the bad news and she happens to be standing next to him, so he takes it out on her, which kind of sucks for her.
Not cool. But Abby Lee, she was really good in Lovecraft Country. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I don't remember. I didn't get all the way through that, and I can't picture her now.
She was Christina Braithwaite, the blonde lady. She was in most of the episodes. She was a big part.
Okay.
Good performance in there. I think she's going to have a bright future in acting.
Let's hope so.
She's fine in this. This was an early role in her acting career, but I think she's gotten stronger as time goes on. But the cast, again, I can't stress enough. Good cast. Not the problem with this one.
No, not at all. Good cast.
So the Roland character, we got to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about the Roland character. We talked about his weak introduction, and then Jake gets to meet him in person. Jake jumps through this portal, ends up in a dusty world, and he just walks alone across a desert and finds...
I walk alone. Sorry, it's a Godsmack song.
Yeah, he's gobsmacked.
Gun to the head.
All right.
First meeting. He drinks his water.
He's thirsty as heck, so he finds Roland's campsite, and he drinks his water, and he gets caught by the gunslinger. And he's like, oh, you're the guy from my dreams. I know you. And what do we say about this part of the movie?
It's just kind of underwhelming. At first, Roland's suspicious of him. He thinks he's working for Walter, and then he finds out that he's not, but he's still a dick to him anyway. He's just like,
it's that slowly warming up to the kid thing of the grizzled guy who's slowly won over because he's, actually, your drawings are good. I'm keeping these. So they try to work the relationship.
He's not keeping them because he likes them. He's keeping them because he thinks they'll help him find Walter. He's not like, you got some skill. I'm going to sell these on Etsy. No, he thinks he can use them to help figure out where Walter is. But Jake tags along.
And then they're in a forest. Wait, how did they were in a desert and now they're in a forest.
Because they're just walking, bro. It's a long walk.
They're covering some ground. And then there's this whole set of action that happens in the forest that is supposed to be some of the payoff of the sci-fi and horror of the movie. But I was like, that didn't go anywhere. They have this moment where some force of evil presents to both of them as their missing dads because they both lost their dads. And it's the whole like, hey, I'm your dad. I'm not a scary ghost demon. Why don't you come say hi to me?
Very tropey. Yeah. Well-worn territory for sure. And it's really dumb to have Roland confronted by his dad because it's pretty obvious from the get-go that he's not going to fall for it. He's already warning Jake against it. So there's no stakes there. It's not like he's suddenly going to lose his shit and be like, oh, you really are my dad, and walk over there. So why even bother doing that? Just did Haysbert need another day's work?
And I think you're right, because then the director's like, you know what? You're right. That was dumb. Why did we try that? So Roland shoots the glowing demon thing and it disappears. And then something else jumps out at them. And I'm like, is that the same creature? It's real dark in the forest. You don't know. Was that a different creature? The second set of fights?
So what's coming through is a whole bunch of creatures. And that's just like one that snuck through. I don't know if the evil was an amalgamation of all the evil that's trying to break through into their world. It harkens back to the portals between worlds ripping. Okay. There are crazy monsters that live in this in-between space called Todash space. But so I understand that one creature could get through and then they have to deal with them, but it doesn't really vibe with the whole ghostly apparition thing because, like, how smart are these creatures? Are they crafty like that to be pretending? How do they know their memories? I thought that was Walter at first. That would have made a lot more sense.
Yeah, it was smart enough that you do think it's Walter, but then they just defeat it quickly. And then this thing that comes out and attacks them immediately after is like a mindless beast kind of thing. It's no longer a smart, crafty thing. It's just a thing that screams a lot and comes after you hard.
And poisons Roland with the fastest acting poison I've ever fucking seen in my life. He has black veins growing down his arm in like 20 minutes. But yeah, that whole thing feels half-baked.
Because then they move on from that section and you're like, oh, nothing changed. They fought two little battles. Oh, except that Roland's sick now. He needs a little bit of health care.
He's weak. Yeah, he's a little weaker than he was. So I guess that helps level the playing field with some of the little minions.
Oh, that makes sense.
Battles a little later on. But he does, you know what, never mind. I was about to say something about the books. But no, I'm not going to do it. I can't keep doing it. It's not fair to the listeners. Or you, Ian. So
it's fine. I like to hear about something that might have been good instead of this movie, which which was
No,
quite...
because I want you to read these books. That's what I want.
Right, okay, yes.
I think I'm going to reread them too, just because talking about this got me excited. And I've definitely forgotten chunks of it because it's been years since I've read them.
Yeah, when they're
so I
that
do want
long
to go
too.
back and revisit them. All right. So
should we get to the big scene? Walter cooks a chicken.
yeah, the one good scene, Walter cooks a chicken. I wasn't sure it was a chicken at first, but then you're right, it is, because they made it look pink and gross. I thought.
But doesn't he literally say, hey, they don't have chicken where I'm from?
He does. No, you're right. It is
Okay,
a chicken.
okay.
But at first, when he's just like cutting it, I was like, it almost looked like an organ, not like a breast.
Like maybe he brought some weird shit in there to make it more horrific.
Yeah.
But no, the horror of this scene is that it's a clash of the mundane and the very, very wrong, right? The couple, Jake's mom and stepdad, walk home into their apartment and they find a man in there just very casually making himself a chicken dinner. And that's weird. It sounds really funny as well, but it's also scary because that's fucked up. And he is very fucked up. So some of that terror comes across. This is the one scene, as we said, that comes across as unique and special and with a little hit of horror that you wish more of the movie had.
He's pretty intimidating in how like casual he is.
Yeah.
That's really what makes you realize that he's someone to not be trifled with, because he just doesn't care about whatever Lon is saying. Good old Lon. He just disregards him completely, basically blurts out his biggest secret to his girlfriend or wife. I'm not sure if they're married.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't tell either.
And then just kills him by telling him to stop breathing, which is a neat party trick. But like, he uses it a little too much in the movie.
Yeah, you think they could have mixed it up. They mix it up a couple times, but they do come back to the stop breathing. I think because it's easy. You don't need any visual effects.
Yeah.
The guy just has to fall down.
Reminded me a lot of Kilgrave from Jessica Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Got a very similar vibe from that. And this is also the one scene where I feel like McConaughey gave a fuck and actually tried to deliver a performance that has, I don't know, some gravity to it. Yeah. But the character is supposed to be like a real jokester, but not like in a real funny way, like in a way like he's crazy and he thinks he's funny.
Yeah, okay.
But no one else does. And I feel like Skarsgård got that across a little bit in his portrayal.
I know what you mean. I think he did, because that did not come across from McConaughey, but I can picture that vibe that you're talking about a little bit from the Skarsgård.
Right. And I think that's what was missing from it, is that sense of, it also lends itself to a sense of wrongness about the character. Like you're like, oh, something's off here. Now he just seems like grumpy middle management.
That's the problem, is if he was like this terrifying thing, which he's capable of being in every scene, that would make him a fun, scary, big bad guy for the movie. But by the time he does this scary thing in this scene, we've already seen him just managing his staff. Like he's had a bunch of scenes where he's just dealing with the numbskulls that work for him and telling them to get me those reports and find out where the boy is.
You half expect him to be like, oh, can you come in on the weekend? Like we're really short staffed right now to fucking Pimley or something. That's not the best way to set up a scary character.
Kind of diffused the idea that he's this unbelievably scary thing when we saw him doing mundane workplace tasks.
And McConaughey can do it. You know he can. If you've seen Killer Joe, you know he can play unhinged, intimidating weirdo really well. So it's just a shame. I feel like he mailed it in. He cashed the check and probably did 4 days work on this movie. It's not like in that many scenes, and they're all in the same locations.
Yeah, it seems pretty easy, but I also don't want to pin too much on him. Maybe it's just I've been won over by his boyish charms. I still somehow have some affection for him and pin more the blame on the writing, because I don't think there was room for him to take it in that direction where we really wanted it to go.
Are you saying that an Akiva Goldsman screenplay has problems?
Has that ever happened before?
You know it has, right? I figure like a screenwriting buff like yourself would know Akiva Goldsman's a terrible screenwriter.
Okay, but he has a bunch of successful adaptation credits on his resume.
He does.
I don't necessarily know what's wrong with him, what you particularly have in mind. He's got some trashy stuff in his portfolio too, but he's got Beautiful Mind, Da Vinci Code, very successful adaptation.
Successful, but yeah, also Beautiful Mind has not aged well.
But they gave him the Oscar for Beautiful Mind. I mean, it might not look so great in the rearview mirror.
Yeah,
but
so he did the Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons. He did the Divergent series. He did Rings, the sequel, the threequel to Ring. It was the third one. I, Robot. Not great. Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Batman Forever. A Time to Kill. That's a good one. Cinderella Man's pretty good. He's got more misses than hits, I'd say.
He's also, like you said, he's a guy who will get it done. And so you could see why when it pivoted to him, it's like, give me a movie that works in the Hollywood way. I need a kid hero. I need him to come of age, realize he's the chosen one, win over the crusty old co-protagonist, and save the universe. And he's like, okay, I can make that happen.
Hit these beats that, every third movie has hit that's ever been made. But it's also hard to say how much of the script is whose. There was a bajillion rewrites and people that went through this thing. So bits and pieces, I'm sure, were kept from all of them and make for this weird abomination that we watched.
Speaking of the successes of the movie, writing-wise, there's a funny line that you and I both liked. which they also used in the trailers, which is funny for modern social and political reasons. Roland is asking Jake, do they have guns in your world? Are bullets as rare as they are here? And Jake just goes, you're going to like Earth a lot. And as usual, I can't do the justice, but he's good. He gets a lot of punchlines in this movie, that one maybe being his funniest one. And he nails them. He doesn't lean too hard on them. He plays the smart youngster just right. And his punchlines all work. That, to me, was one of the best parts of the movie.
Well, he's not like overly plucky, which I
Right.
think goes a long way to not making him annoying. Maybe it's because he's British. Like they have a more understated sense of humor, and that's like how he learned how to deliver lines.
Yeah, that could
Did
be.
you know he was British?
I didn't. I did not guess it. I was fooled.
I only found out researching for the pod. I was like, he's in a lot of BBC productions. Oh, okay.
Okay.
British. So-
Maybe that's that dry British humor that he was manifesting.
which works with the tone of the movie. I don't think it would have worked if you had a real over-the-top kid actor delivering these lines with a little nod of the head, and
Right.
like hands on his hips.
Yeah, too precocious would have been bad. It could have gone real sour.
Exactly. So, but that's a good moment where you can mine humor from the seriousness of Roland and how stoic he is. You're not going to get him delivering punchlines, but you can have him be funny on accident. And fish out of water stuff is always a fun bit. And that's some of the best stuff from the novels. So that works here. But never mind. I'm not getting into more book comparisons. I got to check myself.
Okay. Other thing that maybe works in this part of the movie is what you call the heartbeat shot.
Yes, where Roland is feeling defeated. One of Walter's minions has picked up Jake and is running through the forest with him, or the plains, I
Or
guess.
the cornfield. Maybe a little children of the
Cornfield,
corn
yeah.
Easter egg there.
Oh, the one who runs beyond the corn or whatever.
Exactly.
Wasn't that the bad guy in the Children of the Corn?
Yeah, and more
He
than
had like a
one
name.
story. In that story about the well, there was some cornfield action too, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's true. So Roland closes his eyes and concentrates really hard. He's listening to the surroundings. It's almost like a bit of a Matrix / Max Payne bullet time moment.
Sure.
Where he's moving his gun like a little bit here, a little bit there, and then he pulls the trigger and he shoots this guy that's like hundreds of yards away by this point with a revolver, which is just cool. And true to like how skilled Roland is supposed to be at gunslinging, even in his weakened state. He's able to focus down and get the job done. And that was cool. And it really gives you more of an indication of how formidable he can be as a combatant.
Yeah, and that's where you see Idris Elba in this iconic role that's supposed to have all this heavy, cool stuff going on. And now finally he gets to be a badass for a minute in an inventive way, right? Later on, he has to just be the sort of shoot more bullets than everybody else kind of a badass, which is okay too. But this is where, oh, this guy has something special and he saves the day in a cool way. And it has a little buildup, so it surprises you and it rewards you.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole invasion of the little town scene was chaotically shot, I thought. It was hard to follow where everybody was and what everybody was doing at any given moment. But the payoff, I think, was pretty worth it to get that shot.
But like we said, with the travelogue nature of the story, that's a little side thing. They're like, let's have a big fight. And okay, that's over. Restart the portal. It's time to continue our journey.
Let's go back to New York City again. You ready to take us there, Ian?
Yeah, let's go back. Boys are back in town.
All right.
Back in New York, Jake returns home and learns that Walter killed his mom. Roland feels bad. Wow, wow. Sorry, Mom. Roland feels bad for the orphan Jake and has a father-son moment where he shows Jake how to shoot a gun and he teaches him the gunslinger's creed. As they prepare for battle, Walter shows up unexpectedly and kidnaps Jake back to Midworld to use him to destroy the Dark Tower. As Jake tries to resist Walter's machine, Roland shoots his way through dozens of Walter's henchmen and finally fights Walter face to face. With the help of some psychic encouragement from Jake, Roland manages to kill Walter. Roland then frees Jake and destroys Walter's machine, and with the threat to the Dark Tower eliminated, the two decide to partner up and go back to Midworld together. Aw.
Yeah.
Now they're setting up a buddy cop thing for the second movie.
The second movie that thankfully would never come to pass.
Midworld Bad Boys.
Man, I've got some issues with this section of the movie.
Okay.
But first, let's talk about something good. Roland being a fish out of water in the big city. He's like fucking Crocodile Dundee.
Oh my gosh, he is.
But some funny stuff here.
There is.
I liked him in the hospital talking to the doctors because he's not making sense. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, there's good stuff. It's weird to start this in this part of the movie when you had him so dry and serious for 2/3 of the movie. And now we're doing a last action hero thing. That was one of my first thoughts when the movie started. I'm like, uh-oh, folks, we got a last action hero situation. We got a young fatherless kid and a big tough hero. And how are they going to come together? And then now we've got the third act. So you're back in New York City. just like Jack, what was Arnold's character's name?
Jack Slater.
Jack Slater, yeah.
You're dead on. This is very much a Last Action Hero situation. And we also like the kid in Last Action Hero.
That's
so
true.
It pans out. It makes sense on all
worked.
levels.
Yep.
Walter is the creepy axe murderer guy, better dressed. The Ripper. Right? Wasn't it the Ripper? The Tom Noonan character?
Also known as the Ripper. Yeah, that was probably just a manifestation of the same character.
He's got a lot of names. There's no way to know that. But yeah, like that stuff's fine. It's tropey and it's kind of cliche, but for a reason, that stuff works. And with the tone they're trying to hit in this movie, you had to think it was going to go there at some point and have Roland be a little silly goose out in the big city. He doesn't know what's going on. He's not from around here.
He's not.
He's crazy. I did like when he goes to the gun store, he loads up on all the ammo. That was exciting for him. You could tell. He hadn't seen that many bullets in a long time. I hope before he goes back to the gun store to get more stuff, because if Midworld is really so low on bullets, he should definitely stock up.
Yeah, they should definitely go to Walmart and go to town, get a few shopping carts full before they go through that portal.
Stock up, get your supplies ready. But what are they going to do in Midworld now? They won. The tower's safe. There's nothing to do now.
Yeah, it's not exactly fucking Star Wars where we're excited for the next chapter. The war's over. They're going to go slowly rebuild that little shanty town and help people fix their burned barns.
I guess he doesn't need that many guns. But speaking of Star Wars, it's funny you bring that up because they did something I fucking hate in this movie. They turned the shine, which, is the Shining from the movie The Shining.
Right.
The psychic ability that characters in the Stephen King universe have.
Okay.
They basically turned into fucking midi-chlorians from Star Wars, like what Episode 1 did with making the Force into this scientific equation that you could tell how powerful somebody was by testing their blood. Walter holds up a little reader, like a little meter next to Jake and was like, he's off the charts. Go fuck yourself with this bullshit. Kiss my ass. That's so stupid. That's fucking, they saw what people's reaction were to midi-chlorians where everyone fucking hated it. And we're like, we should mimic that. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, it brings up a good point. I hadn't clocked that particular cheesy trope that they fell into with measuring it. I remember that they're licking a splinter from the floorboard monster and going, oh yeah, that's the good shit. So there was one of those kind of moments too. That's how they could sense his powerful shine. But it's funny that they went heavy on that side of it. And then the actual moments where he uses the shine are very understated.
Yeah, there's no like special effect to really show what's happening. It's just
there's not even
Walter like looking back and forth like, oh, he's opening the portal with his mind.
He's doing stuff with his mind, you guys, because he defeats the floorboard monster with the shine. And normally, even if you're not doing special effects, you might zoom in on the character's eyes dramatically, or you might show him concentrating or
make him talk with his finger like this. Hello, Walter.
Or that's tried and true. You could have done that. But they don't show the shine. They like aggressively underplay it. Even when he's using it to get out of the biggest dramatic action moments, they don't show it. And then yet they're like, oh, but people will understand because we'll lick a splinter or we'll hold up a little midichlorian meter. Weird choices.
Yes.
Strange choices in this.
Weird choice. Again, it's more like kind of shoehorning sci-fi stuff into it with the little meter. Do you remember the little meter scene?
I can't picture it.
It's when Jackie Earle Haley was holding him hostage in that little club in New York and Walter walks up to him. He holds a little thing next to him and it goes like, boo-doo-doo, and it fills up the bars like when you get service on your cell phone. And he goes, you are as advertised or something like that.
Okay.
Something stupid.
Can we talk about the bar?
The bar from the rave scene in the beginning of Blade. I think that's where they're hanging out.
It definitely looks like a hipster bar / gastropub thing going on. It's got minimal signage outside. And is it called, am I mistaken, or is this place called the Dixie Pig?
It is called the Dixie Pig. Yeah, it is.
It's got a steel pig shaped sign hanging out, like a vintagey old timey thing, like a hipster would do for their bar. And it's called the Dixie. Does that have any relevance to, I hate to bring up the books, but does that mean anything to you?
I'm pretty sure that's taken from the books. Okay. It's been a while since I've read them, but that feels like a King thing.
But they don't explain.
Yeah, it brings to mind nothing more than the Spotted Pig in Manhattan, which is like a famous burger restaurant. So when they go to the Dixie Pig, I'm like, oh, I need to go get myself a fucking burger and fries right now. Like I'm hungry all of a sudden. But then the amount of space they have in this place, the rent would be $1 million a month. Like it's fucking huge.
It's like a whole shopping mall inside, right? There's like levels.
It's like an abandoned shopping mall.
Yeah.
It looks like where the Foot Clan hangs out in the fucking first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Like who has space like this in Manhattan in 2017?
I don't know. Walter's got money.
So, yeah, R.I.P. Katheryn Winnick. Sad to see her go. She gets burned into a pile of ash? He just burns her? Is that what happens?
I kind of liked that he burned her and that he burned her off screen and that all we see is a burnt stain on the floor. That was kind of gross and creepy.
It's pretty severe, yeah. It was harsh.
They set it up. We talked about he kept reusing his stop breathing gimmick too much.
Yeah.
But there's one other place in the movie where they set it up and they don't show it, but they show him kneeling over a wounded person and then he goes, burn. And they cut away so you don't see the guy burning, but it gives you the idea that's one of his bag of tricks for when he wants to dispose of somebody a little more dramatically. He tells them to burn and they burn. That's what happened to Jake's mom.
I would have saved her if I could have. I would have saved her. Katheryn Winnick, if you're listening, call me. My wife Jamie's listening. I'm just kidding.
He's kidding, Jamie, but he's serious, Katheryn.
Yeah. If we're talking about Walter's powers, we skipped over, but I did want to go back. It was kind of cool when he told his two henchmen that failed him to kill each other and then just walked away while they did it.
Yeah.
That was a cool use of his powers. But yeah, the rest.
Yeah, that was fun. And they didn't show it. They just showed the faces of the people seeing them off screen as the chaos started to break out.
And then he just tells everyone to calm down and enjoy the show. So he can control large groups of people with his proclamations. How did this guy ever lose a battle in a war? Like, how did a war even happen?
I don't know.
Did they not have megaphones in Midworld? Just get a fucking speaker.
I wish the filmmakers had asked that question and thought through it a little more.
What the hell? So then we get to this final battle. It's pretty lame.
It's okay, I guess, if you like big gun battles. It's a gun battle followed by a magical one-on-one gun battle.
Oh, the gun battle's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have that much of a problem with that. I'm talking about the fucking CGI rock fight / just a lot of problems with this scene because, for one thing, Roland is shooting bullets at Walter. He's bouncing them off all kinds of walls and they're hitting Walter. Walter is catching them in his hand and is clearly unfazed by it. So what's the worst case scenario here for Walter? If he doesn't catch one, it's going to hit him in the leg. Is that going to hurt him? Because it doesn't hurt his hand when he catches them.
Yeah, you're asking tough questions here, buddy, because this shit doesn't make sense. I mean, that's how he dies, because he misses one.
Yep. So what's different now? I figured Jake made that bullet like extra special fast and good.
Oh.
And that's why it was the one that killed him. But
That's generous of you.
some real weak explanations going on here for what, why kill him with a bullet? I understand bullets are important because he's the gunslinger, but if you have your main villain catch 15 bullets before that shot, it makes it a little strange when one of them actually kills him.
Yeah, you go into the scene not really being sure what the rules are, what Walter's powers are. But
Also, you come out of it not sure what the rules are.
exactly, yeah. And you don't even know what Roland's powers are. He's not just good with guns, but he's pretty tough. He can fall from a 3-story building and be fine. I guess he tells the doctor that in the hospital. I'm stronger than most.
Tougher than most.
Stronger than most. But yeah, so then there's this climactic battle and you don't really know what to expect. Walter's doing a lot of Neo from the Matrix stuff. He's blocking bullets with little rocks and waving his hands in front of him and making force fields. And yeah, and then in the end, it's just the power of love or whatever. Jake reaches out, like Roland is feeling real down because he shot all the bullets and Walter blocked them all. And Jake reaches out into his mind. He's like, remember the old saying, what do they call that? The gunslinger's creed? He's like, say it with me.
I do not shoot with my hand. He who shoots with his hand has forgotten the face of his father. I remember part of it from memory, but not all of it.
That was good. And I don't know whether to like that or to cringe every time I heard it, to be honest. It's somewhere in between.
It's prominently in the story as King wrote it.
Okay.
But King is not immune to cheese, as we know.
Yeah, no.
He can be corny on his own.
It has that King flavor. I figured that was probably pretty directly lifted from the books. He who does this has forgotten the face of his father, which is another one of those things that you can write, but maybe you shouldn't say.
It's tough to work. But I don't think you could, fuck am I saying? I was going to say, I don't think you can make an adaptation of The Dark Tower and not include it, but they clearly just did whatever the fuck they wanted.
You could not include anything you want. Yeah, go to fucking town when it comes to not including things. But yeah, that's enough.
Including things, jeez.
Just saying that the corny phrase infuses him with the enthusiasm to do a little stunt shot. I think Annie Oakley used to do that in the Wild Bill Hickok stunt show. What was that? Am I mixing up my old-timey Western characters? Anyway, somebody who could shoot good in an old-timey Western show might have tried a trick like this, bounce one bullet off the girder, knock the other one sideways just before Walter thinks he's going to block it, and boom, one bullet gets through, and that was it. That was the end for the big, scary sorcerer guy.
Maybe he's wearing invisible bullet-catching gloves, and that's why his hands are impervious, but the rest of him isn't.
It's just if he loses focus, it's like you got to stay on top of your game. And
keep your eye on the bullet. It's like baseball.
Yeah.
Fuck this stupid-ass movie. Was there anything else? Oh, yeah. Well, you did bring up a good point here that the movie kind of undercuts the main dilemma of the film, which is Roland going to try to save the tower, or is he just going to try to kill Walter?
This was my main point. Aside from the nuts and bolts of the actual action scenes, it's just a pure action movie. It's totally mechanical. It's just, well, did Roland scoop up enough bullets? Is he going to run out of bullets before he gets through all these henchmen? Is Jake going to be able to concentrate hard enough and wield his shine strongly enough to stop the destruction of the universe? And it's
Tune in next week. No, sorry.
yeah, there's no conflict. Nobody is conflicted going into this. And the only thing that resembles a dilemma throughout the movie that could have come to pass here is, wait a minute, Roland this whole time is being a jaded curmudgeon. I don't care about saving the universe anymore. I just want to fucking kill the dude who killed my dad. And then at the end, there's literally nothing more he needs to do to save the universe than kill the dude who killed his dad. Like, it's literally and exactly what he needs to do. So the dilemma dissolves into nothing. His seeking revenge is exactly what he should have been doing the whole time to save the universe.
Not to mention, Walter's little fortress explodes and they're on the other side of the portal. But what about all those poor kids that were forced to like try to bring the tower down against their will?
They were living in
They're all dead.
They were living in government housing next to that building that just blew up. And there's another place where they kind of hand waved it. If you notice when they're out on the street outside the Dixie Pig immediately after blowing shit up, there's a bunch of kids come running out into the arms of first responders and parents who are hugging them.
Oh, so they came through the portal?
I think maybe they came through the portal after it was blown up. But yeah, they leave a lot of questions. I'm like, I thought those kids were dying when they were like, they're strapped into the chair and they have to shoot a sky beam out of their foreheads. Like, I thought that was killing them when they failed.
Fucking sky beams. Yet another one. Yeah, no, I didn't think they were dying, but I thought that it was like taking a lot out of them and they were clearly not there of their own free will.
Yeah.
So I thought it was like a thing where they might die eventually. But then you see the guy on the street in New York. It was
right. He dispels that idea that they just die. They just come back out as ruined people with their shine drained.
So yeah, I assumed Roland killed all those kids, but now you're saying that maybe they included an extra scene to brush that aside.
It's just like a little bare hint of it where if you want to believe, if you want to connect the dots in this movie and you're willing to go there, you can do it, but just barely.
And that's the Dark Tower.
It still stands today, if I understand. Or maybe it's gone. Maybe that's why the last couple of years have been the way they have.
Oh, geez. You got to figure something out here.
The Dark Tower is no longer, and the darkness is pouring into our universe.
You want to talk about what happened to the people involved after the movie?
Yeah, where they ruined shells of themselves with their shine stripped from them.
I was. So Nikolai Arcel, Danish director and screenwriter. He had done Royal Affair in 2012, which was a critically acclaimed film. Very different from this one, though. Not a big action movie, more of a small character drama. It was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars, so he had some cachet in Hollywood at that point. But this was his first and only, to this point, American film. He has not worked since this movie came out, as far as I could tell. Ooh, he is attached to a film version of Don Winslow's The Power of the Dog, which we both read.
Interesting.
Don Winslow wrote Savages. If you guys stay tuned for that one, we got to wrap up the Taylor Kitsch trilogy. But it's like a Mexican cartel drug drama thing. I assume they'll have to change the name now, though, because there was just a critically acclaimed Netflix movie with the same name.
Yeah, and a very different storyline. So, yeah.
Very different movies. When I heard Benedict Cumberbatch was in The Power of the Dog on Netflix, I was like, what fucking character is he going to play? But no, different movie. So, but I can't find a lot of information about that. The last thing I read was from October, so it does seem like it's still happening. It's not super old news, but there's just not a lot of information out there about it. But I think Antonio Banderas is supposed to be in that.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Cool. Yeah, could be good. Let's hope for something better from Nikolai next time.
Yeah. This is also the last writing credit that Goldsman has for a film.
Oh, wow.
But he's been doing a lot of Star Trek stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He pivoted. Picard and yeah. So I don't know that this really hurt his career as much as he just decided to go another route. The actors involved, most of them came out relatively unscathed, but I'm not surprised by that. Like I said, the actors were not what was wrong with this movie, but if you want to know what they're up to, Idris Elba is still just crushing it. Love him. He just was the main star of The Suicide Squad, a movie that people seem to really like. He was in Concrete Cowboy, which was a movie I still haven't checked out, but I've been meaning to. I think it was on Netflix. He's making a Luther movie, if you like the Luther Show, the police drama from the BBC. And he's also playing Knuckles in Sonic 2. Yeah, Knuckles the Echidna. I think that's how they're pronounced. Echidnas?
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know my Sonic lore, but I do know my echidnas from my time as an LA Zoo employee. So,
did we just get another Ian morsel of backstory?
Little teaser. We have to work it in somehow. I did work at the zoo. I grew up near the zoo, and so that was a place where, as a teenager, if you wanted to get your first job, one of the places you could could go down to was the LA Zoo.
I really was hoping that We Bought a Zoo bombed, but it didn't. So maybe we can make an exception for it to hear all about the zoo employee life and what it would be like to actually buy a zoo.
Yeah, a lot of zoo hits. Zoolander, Zootopia.
Actually, I don't even think Zoolander was a hit at the time. I think it became beloved after the fact. So yeah, we
might have to go there.
So McConaughey has like vaguely right-wing political aspirations. He did decline to run for governor of Texas. He was hinting at it, but he's still acting. Not quite the star draw that he was. He's had a few misses and doing some more supporting roles. He had a big role in White Boy Rick, which is a movie I liked, but I don't think anyone saw. But he's doing a lot of supporting roles now, and we'll see where it takes him. Tom Taylor played Lance in The Kid Who Would Be King in 2019, which was, critics loved this movie, but it bombed terribly. So if we ever want to do like a kids movie, that would be a good one. And he was on the BBC miniseries Us, which is not to be confused with This Is Us, which could probably get confusing, and is on the British drama series Close to Me. So he's doing British stuff. He's out there doing Brit things.
I'd be interested to see where he goes from here if he launches a mainstream Hollywood movie career.
I hope so. He was really good in this. He was one of the bright spots. And Katheryn Winnick is on Big Sky, which is a show I hear is interesting. I haven't checked it out. I think that's the one with Ryan Phillippe, our friend from MacGruber.
Oh my gosh, we love him.
I have to check that out. So King always puts a brave face on about movies before they come out. But
right.
He was pretty quick to disown this bad boy. When it finally was released, he said in an interview with Vulture that the film's failure was due to its compression of the source material. Yeah, no shit. Squeezing 7 books into 90 minutes isn't going to go very well. And the decision to make the film PG-13 also hurt it. But he did defend parts of the film, claiming that Goldsman did a terrific job taking a central part of the book and turning it into what I thought was a pretty good movie. So he didn't go too hard on this one. He's mellowed in his old age, I think.
Yeah, he's used to it. Yeah, all that was left. This movie, if you were being honest, should have said inspired by the Stephen King Dark Tower series. Like, it was not really.
Well, why bother? Why go there? Just make your own thing.
I know. That thing,
you're not including enough of it to make it worthwhile to fans of the series, and you're attaching this kind of baggage of the IP to it without any of the payoff.
But like you said, Stephen King's been through a long series of adaptations, some of which turned into great classics and a lot of which turned into cheeseball nothings. So he's probably got a thick skin. But yeah, this movie ended up just selling his name and not really taking anything that was all that special. It took some of the particulars of the characters and their names, but there's not that much Stephen King left in this movie.
No, there really isn't. And Howard was a little more willing to be brutally honest about the movie when he was talking about it after the fact. He said that the film was not faithful to its source material due to lacking the novel's horror elements and by presenting the story as a boy's own adventure with Jake as the protagonist instead of Roland, which is pretty much what you said before you knew that Ron Howard had said this. So you're right on. He elaborated that we always felt like we were holding back something, and I think at the end of the day it was that. He explained that these deviations from the books were a sense of maybe too much listening to what you think the marketplace is calling for instead of really the essence of what Stephen King was giving us. And then he said it should have been a TV series, which I agree with. I think if The Dark Tower ever gets adapted, it's going to have to be on TV because the money's just not in Hollywood right now, and streamers need content, man. Somebody fucking take this thing and make it into a great prestige TV drama.
Like we're saying at the top, if only it could have been thrown to a Damon Lindelof in the current streamer marketplace. You know, he took Watchmen into this whole other place, but it fit so perfectly into the Watchmen world and just made so much good drama and had so much meaning.
And if you look at what he did with The Leftovers, only season 1 follows the book, and then you run out of material. But he made 2 more seasons of it that were great and very true to the spirit and essence of the books. He seems to be really talented at dissolving down what people felt attached to about a property, not the plot or the characters even necessarily, but just the tone and the essence of it. And that would be a great match for something based on The Dark Tower, because it would have to get changed quite a bit to be palatable, a live action adaptation. It would be insanely expensive to try to film everything that is in the books. There's gigantic bears and whole cities, like tunnels of cities inspired by the Wizard of Oz, and bearded Vikings called the TikTok Man. It would just be too much, but they're not going to get the Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings budget. So you got to be able to pare it down to its essence. And I think Lindelof would be perfect for that. But I wonder if he's just burnt out on IP.
Yeah, I don't know if you can circle back. There's something, whether it's ego or just whether Hollywood lets you loop around on yourself. You get a swipe and then you're gone. You're on to something else.
Amazon had the rights for a TV series and a pilot script was written, but as of January 2020, they decided not to move forward. I couldn't find who the creative behind that was, though. Who was the showrunner who was steering that ship? So who knows? Maybe in a few years, something will come out of it. But the movie did open at number 1, like we mentioned, with $19.5 million. there wasn't much opening against it. So that was still a disappointing take. They wanted at least 20 and probably a lot more than that. Dunkirk was in its third week and still almost beat this. Dunkirk made 18 and change that week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The next week, it would drop to fourth with $7.8 million because Annabelle Creations somehow made fucking $35 million opening weekend. And as much as we said The Dark Tower doesn't have a lot of horror elements, I assume Annabelle took a lot of the audience away from The Dark Tower.
I know. It's kind of like rubbing it in their faces. Like, hey, idiots, you should have made a dumb horror movie. That would have been better than a dumb kid's adventure. And
then it went all the way to ninth place in the third week with $3.7 million. The Hitman's Bodyguard and Logan Lucky both opened. I'm pretty sure those are both PG-13. Probably a lot of audience overlap there as well. And then it was basically never heard from again in the States. So
yeah,
the buzz around this movie was pretty bad. The moving release dates, the terrible reviews, the rotating door of creatives that were attached to it at any given point. I think this movie was just pretty much cursed by the time it came out and people knew it. And again, it's not an Avengers level IP. It's not even a Game of Thrones level IP to draw people in on the name alone. You got to have the quality to go along with it. And they just didn't. So I'm not shocked that it failed.
Me either. It got run through the Hollywood grinder and it's like, oh, we started out with something so promising and it just over the time it got ground down into like, you know what? This is all we can do. We know how to make this certain kind of movie. Let's just make it and put Stephen King name on it. And yeah.
I felt very much like the rights are expiring. We got to make this thing or we're going to lose the money we paid for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, really just a wet fart of a movie. This is how I would describe it. Did you have a summation of your thoughts on this film you wanted to hit us with?
You know what? We talked pretty well through everything that I wanted to say about this film. I have a summation of 2021, that was tough. And let's look forward to 2022 and try to all be good to each other, try to stay healthy and happy. It's Blast Zone's second year, our first full calendar year in existence. So we're destined, hopefully, for big, exciting things this year. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we've got some really cool movies coming up. We're excited to dig into it. The audience is growing every week. We're having a blast.
Yeah,
no
we're
pun
thrilled.
intended. So we're having fun. We're in it for the long haul. Next week, we're doing Death to Smoochy. We've had a few requests for that one. A few listeners have chimed in and asked for that one. I watched that movie a lot as a kid, but I have not seen it in a long time.
Okay.
I'm excited to check it out. And please remember, rate, review, subscribe, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. The ratings help us find more listeners, the reviews as well.
We appreciate when you do that.
Follow us on Twitter at BlastZonePod. Shoot us an email, blastzonepod@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.